Okay, today is not a hard assignment. I'll tell you what the scratch paper is for in a second. Graph this equation. There's no second power, means you're going to have a parabola. The leading coefficient 3 is positive, so it's going to look like that, and there's no parentheses, so that makes this standard form. Okay. So the most important point is the vertex, and then these two. Now remember the formula for vertex on standard form. It's the opposite of b divided by 2a. So opposite of b divided by 2 times a, so that's going to be negative 6, and then I take 3 times 2, and that's 6. That's negative 1. So 1 higher, 1 lower. Now when you plug these in, 3 and then 0 to the second power plus 6 times 0 is 0. Negative 3 and then negative 1 to the second power plus 6 times negative 1 gives me negative 3. I'm hoping that's 0, otherwise I have it wrong. 3 and then negative 2 to the second power plus 6 and then negative 2, and that's 0, 2. Okay, so nice. So I've got 0, 0 in the middle. I'm left 1, down 3, and then I'm left 2 right there. Okay, now here's my answers. It says how many places does this graph cross the x-axis? And here's my x. Well, twice, okay? It crosses it at 0, and then it crosses it at negative 2. Now what I want to do today is get these answers without having to graph it, okay? Because that's not a very efficient way, okay? And now you're going to learn how to, at least the first part of factoring. Okay, it says find the x-intercepts of the equation. The x-intercepts mean we're just going to put that y, put it equal to 0, and then what I kind of like to do is put the equals 0 on this side. That's just me. Okay, so all you're going to do on these problems here, they all have just 2 terms you're going to factor. They won't be any dots. For some of you who don't know what difference of perfect squares means, we'll discuss it later, but for those of you who I had last year, just that won't happen today. It's going to be the GCF, and then you'll be ready to get your answers. Okay, so I know I got a second power here, so I know there's 2 places, 2 answers for x because of the second power. Okay. Okay, here's what I do. I'm going to make this little box here. It's pretty easy. You make a space with a parentheses and put equals 0 after it. Now, why are we doing that, you ask? Because what I want to do is find a GCF between 7x squared and 2x. Okay? Here's how I do that first. Well, I asked myself, okay, first off, look at the x's. I have an x to the second and an x to the first. The GCF is your smaller x degree. In this case, it'd just be x to the first. So we have that. Okay, now let's talk about 7 and 2. Okay, well, 2 is smaller. Okay, I think of factors of 2. It's just 1 and 2. 1 is a useless factor. Now, let's look at 2. I know 2 divides by 2, obviously, but does 7 divide evenly by 2? No, it does not. Okay, 7 divided by 2 is a decimal. So I'm out of factors, so we're just going to go with x right here. So what I do is I place x here, and then I go divide both of these by x and see what I have as quotients. That's going to be 7. X to the second divided by x is x, plus 2. X divided by x is nothing. Okay, those cross out. When I divide 2 x's of the same degree, they just cancel. So what I've done is I've split it into x times 7x plus 2. Okay, now I'm ready to solve. This factor, the x could equal 0, or the second factor, the 7x plus 2 could equal 0. Well, 0 is your first solution. And then if I minus 2 and minus 2, 7 times x equals negative 2. Divide by 7. Negative 2 divided by 7 is a really weird decimal, so I'm just going to leave it negative 2/7. Okay, so those will be the two solutions. Okay, didn't get that so well, you got to stick with me here. Okay, y equals 3x to the second minus 24x. Okay, so get the y out and just put equals zeros. That's how we want it to look. Now there's two answers for x because of the second power, and there's two terms. So all I'm doing today is trying to come up with a GCF to factor outside of the expression. So I'm looking at 3 and 24, that has x squared, that has x. So x is the smaller degree, just regular x. Now let's talk about 3, okay? 3 and 24. Some of you know the GCF's 3 right away, put it, and then you just go on, okay? But for some of you who are not good with basic multiplication facts, I write the smaller factor. I list factors for it. 3 divided by 1 is 3. 3 doesn't divide by 2. Then we already have 3 there. Okay, now 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 24 divided by 3 is 8. Check your calculator. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So 3 is going to work. So I need to put that 3 with the x. So I yank out 3x. So I divide by 3x, both of these, because that's what I'm pulling out. So that's 1. X to the second power divided by x is x. 24 divided by 3 is 8. Those are out. So I've got 3x. I've factored the expression into 3x times 1x minus 8. So 3 times x could equal 0, or 1x minus 8 could equal 0. So here I just divide by 3 and I get 0. Here I add 8 to both sides, and 1x equals 8. That means that's the answer. Okay? There's supposed to be an x on that right there. Okay, y equals, so equals 0. So there are two solutions here. So I make my box and space parentheses. So GCF, now both of these, oh yeah, by the way, first off, another thing that I forgot to mention, if you have a negative on your leading coefficient, you want to make your GCF negative, okay? Just trust me on this. You need to check for that. And then you get x on both of these, this being the smaller degree, okay? Now see if we can put a coefficient in there too. So 8 and 64, 8, so factors of 8, I got 1 and 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4, 8's not divisible by 3, then I already got 4, okay? Now, 1's useless. 8 divided by 8's 1, 64 divided by 8's 8, so that's going to work, 8. So negative 8x is the greatest common factor. So I divide by negative 8x, so that's going to be 1x minus 8. Okay, if it's a negative, just write minus equals 0. Okay, so negative 8x could equal, the factor of negative 8 times x could equal 0, or the factor of 1x minus 8 could equal 0. So I divide by negative 8, I get 0. Plus 8, x equals 8. Okay. Next one, y equals, so equals 0. Okay, I'm going to put a 1 right there so I can see what my coefficients are. Okay, and then there's two answers we need to find. Now I do have a negative as my leading coefficient, so we want to make our GCF negative. They both have x's, so I take the smaller x. Now 1 and 2, when 1's your smallest, you don't really have a GCF, but it's too late. I've already put some crap over here, so I need to actually use 1 this time. So negative 1x is pulled out. Equals 0, and then I divide by negative 1x. That's a quotient of 1. That's a quotient of x. That's a quotient of negative 2, so minus 2, and those are canceled. Okay, so the factor of negative 1x could equal 0, or the factor of 1x minus 2 could equal 0. So divide by negative 1, I get 0. Plus 2, I get 2. Okay. Okay, and then I've got some more where the only difference between these is he doesn't say y equals. Okay, you're finding the two solutions. Okay, so GCF, I do not have a negative in the front. I have x on both of them, so today you're always going to have x as the GCF. Now let's check 4 and 24. Factors of 4, 1, 4, and then 2, 2. Once you get repeats, you know that's all the factors. 1 is useless unless we already got crap over there. Okay, so 4, I think 4 divides by 4, and so does 24, so 4x is the GCF, so 4x, then I divide by 4x, it's going to be 1x minus 6, okay, so 4x times 1x minus 6, so the 4x minus could equal 0, or the 1x minus 6 could equal 0, so divide by 4, x is 0, plus 6, x equals 6. Okay, next one, negative 9x squared plus 27x equals 0. Again, we're going with the GCF today. We're not going to have any dots, so forget that. Okay, first off, I do have a negative as my leading coefficient, and I can clearly see we got x on both of the terms, so I take the smaller. Let's talk about 9. I got 1, 9. 2 is not a factor of 9. It doesn't divide. And then 3 and 3. 1, totally pointless. Okay, 9 divided by 9 is 1. 27 divided by 9 is 3. So negative 9x. So divide by negative 9x. That's going to be 1x minus 3. Okay, so negative 9x equals 0, or 1x minus 3 equals 0. So divide by negative 9, and you get 0. Plus 3, you get 3. Okay, 2x squared equals minus 10x equals 0. Some of you from last year are getting pretty bored. I can just hear you. Negative in front, no. X on everything, yep. So I take my smallest. You can divide those both by 2. We should probably know that. So 2x. I mean, if you really have to make a list of factors of 2, go for it. But 1x minus 5. So equals 0. So the factor of 2 times x could equal 0, or the factor of 1x minus 5 could equal 0. And then what I'm basically doing, I'll just talk to you while I'm solving this, is I'm taking these, taking them from standard form and putting them into factored form, because to find the vertex, you want it in standard form, so you can do opposite B over 2A, but when you actually have to find the answers for x, they kind of need to be in factored form. Okay, now this one's a little bit different, and here's why. I have x squared and I have x. Having them on opposite sides does not work. Okay, we can get past that right now. When you have 2 different degrees of x like I do, you need to get them to one side so you can factor. Okay? Again, so those were on this the problem is these ones right here, we had them on the same side already, okay? I need to do some work here to get them to the same side. So everything's got to be on one side if you're going to factor. So I'm going to add 20x, but I don't add it to 15x squared because it's not a like term. I put it behind it. And now we have 15x to the second plus 20x equals 0, okay? And now I'm ready to rock and roll. Okay, so GCF, you don't have a negative as your lead coefficient. You got x on both these, 15 and 20. 2's not a factor, 3 and 5, 4's not a factor, and then we already have 5. Now, 15 divided by 15 is 1, but 20 is not divisible by 15. Now try 5. Well, these do both divide by 5, so 5x. So I divide by 5x, so that's going to be 3x plus 4. Okay, so I've got 5x equals 0, or 3 times x plus 4 equals 0. So I get 0. 3 times x equals negative 4, divided by 3, negative 4 over 3. Okay. All right, and then we got a couple story problems. Don't get freaked out here. Okay. It goes a little something like this. It says, okay, you got 9 problems. Soccer ball is kicked off the ground with an initial upward velocity of 45 feet per second. After how many seconds will the ball land on the ground? So this is saying how many seconds. It's not asking you for a max, so we need to actually do this part. Seconds and feet. X is seconds, Y is feet per second. And that's 45. Okay, now is the rate of change going to make this a line? No, a soccer ball goes up, comes back down. It's a parabola, but I'm not finding the maximum height anymore. I'm finding when it's on the ground, okay? So when it's on the ground, that means 0 feet. So I write my base equation, negative 16x to the second, gravity, plus your velocity 45x. It started from nothing, so it equals y. Now 0 feet has been assigned to y, so 0 is going to go right here, okay? So I need to find the two answers that x could possibly be in the equation. So there's 2 terms, so we're looking for a GCF out of the 2 terms. And then equals 0, I guess. Okay, there's a negative in front, sure there is. There's x on both, sure there is. So x, now let's take 16, think of all the factors of 16. 116, 2 times 8, 16 divided by 3 is a decimal, and then 4. Okay, now 16 divides by 16, but 45 does not, okay? 45 also is not divisible by 2. It's also not divisible by 8. It's not divisible by 4 or 4. Okay, but I need a number to go with my negative sign, so I got to use a 1 then. So negative 1x. So that's going to be positive 16x, and then negative 45 minus 45 equals 0. Okay? So negative 1 times x equals 0. 16x minus 45 equals 0. So I get 0 for my first answer. That's because here it's 0 feet too, and that's before the time has started. So that's why you get the 0 there. Plus 45 plus 45, 16 times x equals 45, divided by 16. 45 divided by 16 is a decimal, not a very pleasant one either. We're going to go to the nearest hundredth, 2.81. That's actually the answer you're looking for. Okay, next one. A missile's launched upward into the air, travels in a parabolic path with an initial upward velocity of 1880 feet per second. How many seconds will it reach its ground target? Okay, so I've got seconds and I've got feet. I assign the x to him, the y to him. So per feet per second is 1880. And this is a parabola where we're finding the ground, so 0 feet. So it's a gravity, negative 16x squared plus 1880x, and then I don't have a starting height, just equals y. So I need to substitute that 0 in for y, and then get my two answers that I know there exist for x. So 2 GCF's your first thing. So GCF. Negative in front, yeah, I have x on everything. Now I need to check to see 16 and 1880. Factors of 16, 116, 28, 44. Okay, let's see if 1880 divides by any of this stuff. Let's try 16 first because that's the biggest factor. Nope. Let's try 8 next. Yep, it did. Okay, so 8 is the way to go. negative 8x. Okay, so negative 8x gets pulled out. We'll divide by negative 8x. That's going to be 2x minus 235. Okay. Okay, so now I can solve negative 8 times x equals 0. 2 times x minus 235 equals 0. Divide by negative 8, and I get 0. Plus 235 plus 235. 2 times x equals 235. Divide by 2. So 235 divide by 2, just 117.5. Okay, folks, that's really all I have to say on that today. Hope it's been informative. Remember, when you start off, you put that y, get that out of there, just put equals 0. That's what an x-intercept is. It's when you set the y equal to 0 and then solve for x.